Good evening and welcome to the happenings in Medfield. I'm quite sure the viewing audience is aware of the fact that I sit here with Mike Sullivan on a monthly basis. The happenings in Medfield, situations that develop, and I go right to Mike and he in turn, because of the questions I have, answers them, and you're knowledgeable actually on what's going on in Medfield. And Mike, good to see you.
Hi Jack, good to see you. And we finally made it to summer after that brutal long winter.
That was a long one.
Yes, now we can complain about the heat and humidity. But I'd rather complain about that than,
rather
live through
than
this
the
past
snow
winter
and-
again. Yes,
And that winter was cold and
long. It just seemed to go on
It
forever. Didn't really have much of a spring. Seemed to
that's
be
true.
cold
True.
up until just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll have a long summer and a long warm fall. But we'll
Let's hope.
take what Mother Nature gives us, I guess. Huh?
Well, that's all we can do, but really, you look forward to it.
Yes. Yeah.
Getting started, there's a number of topics, but one in particular I wanted to ask you about because people have asked me, and I'm going to use it as a leader. The situation that had existed, and we've been wrangling it over and over again, the water and the new water tower.
Well, the water tower project is moving along. The legislation authorizing the state to give the town 6 acres of land plus an easement for the water mains has passed, and both branches of the legislature have been signed into law by the governor. And there's a 90-day period till the law takes effect, and that will be up probably mid-July. So we will take ownership of the land. The bids have been put out for the water mains that connect the water tower, the new water tower, to well number 6, and also they run further down Hospital Road down towards Harding Street. So that will be starting shortly. The water tower design is awaiting approval from the Department of Environmental Protection. We have to submit the design to the state agency, and they have to approve it. So we're just waiting here on that. And then we will put bids out for the water tower, and they hope to get started in September on the construction of the water tower itself. The mains will already be well along by that point if they start this month. That's moving along pretty smoothly. We have had a couple of other issues. We did find some lead contaminated soil up around the old water tower, which was not a big surprise because when they used to paint those, they used to use lead-based paints. So you would expect that there would be some lead in the soil from the paint chipping off over the 80 years that was up there. So we are developing a plan to remove that soil or dispose of it in accordance with the appropriate regulations. And there's also there's been an issue up there with the neighbors. There's a proposal to put a cell tower in the town of Dover, but access it through Medfield up in the Evergreen Longmeadow subdivision. They would put a roadway in there to get to the cell tower, and we're suggesting that perhaps it might be more appropriate to put those antennas on top of the new water tower. So that's been another point of contention. It's brought up some issues with the status of the bonds and a lot of complicating factors, but by and large it's moving along pretty relatively smoothly. And the Water and Sewer Board is hoping, if they start construction in September, to have the new water tower online hopefully by June of 2015.
That is real good news.
It is very good, yes.
Very good news. I think people will be very, very happy about that.
Yes, I think they'll see a big difference in the pressure and
Oh, yeah.
And I'm hoping we can save quite a bit on electricity because you don't have to pump the water as far to fill up the tower.
Yeah.
The state hospital tower, we have to leave up until the new tower is built, even though we're not using the water from it, but we need that to maintain fire flows in the event that we had a major fire in town and to help maintain pressure in the system. So as soon as the new tower is up and put into service, we'll be able to start taking down the old one. So.
Oh, good. Right next door, let's talk about it, State Hospital.
The State Hospital, yes, that legislation is moving along. In fact, as we speak, the House of Representatives, the Massachusetts House of Representatives, has engrossed legislation authorizing the division of capital asset management and maintenance to transfer or to sell the property to the town of Medfield. It's about 130 acres. About 37 of that, 39 acres is what most people refer to as the sledding hill. It's on the opposite side of Hospital Road from the main hospital campus. And then there's about another 90 acres with most of the buildings on them that the town will try to purchase. In order to get that done during this administration, it has to get through the Senate and the House by July 30th because the House and Senate adjourn July 30th, and then they don't come back into session until after the election. So it'll be a new legislature being sworn in January. So if it doesn't get through the House and Senate by July 30th, it's essentially dead and it has to start all over again. But our Representative Garlick and Senator Timilty and Representative Dooley have been following legislation and trying to move it along quickly. So I think we'll get that done. Then it still has to be signed by the governor, and then there's also other, they have to survey the property and draw up the deeds and whatnot. So it'll be a few months before we actually take ownership of it. There'll probably have to be some negotiations as to the terms of the sale.
A question, Mike, has come up by people I've talked to. What about the buildings? What are they going to do?
Well, the selectmen just appointed a committee, a 10-member committee, to take a look at all of those issues. And they are scheduled to meet the next week or two and to start looking at that. There's a whole slew of issues. What do you do with the buildings? What uses do you want up there for it? How much land do you want to keep as open space? How much do you want to put into housing? What type of housing? Do you want 55 and older housing? Do you want some 40B housing to meet our 10% quota from the state? Do we want any other uses up there besides open space and housing? Is there any possibility for some commercial development? Those are the type of things they're going to look at. And how do you market the property? What type of development are you looking for? What's the proper mix? So those are still unanswered questions, which I think was made pretty clear at the special town meeting when the whole hospital purchase was debated, that there still is a lot of work to be done. The town still doesn't have all the answers, but the risk was great that the property would be disposed of without any say from the town as to its reuse. So the town decided that even without all the answers, we needed to go ahead and purchase it.
I had 2 or 3 ladies at the Blue Moon having a lunch, I imagine. And they approached me, and I'm going to approach you with it because I know that chapel is beautiful inside and out. And so this one lady said, I remember that chapel many, many years ago. Are you going to keep it?
I think probably if there's any building up there that is sentimental to the residents of the town who've been here for a while, it would be the chapel. And I think probably if there's any building that's going to be saved, it will be that one. There may be a lot more. Some people would like to save what they call the quadrangle, the buildings around the quadrangle. But they have to determine what condition those buildings are in and how amenable they are to redevelopment. But if anything, I think the chapel should be somehow saved, as if nothing else, as a memorial to the patients who lived up there for over 100 years. We'll see. But I think it's something the residents of town need to keep an eye on. I think it was also made clear at town meeting there is a need to develop the property as a way of paying for it. The cleanup of those buildings will be expensive, and you need to recoup some of the outlay to cover the cost of buying the land and cleaning up the buildings. So just to let it sit there and think that we can afford to take all those buildings down on our own and clean up the asbestos and lead paint, be very expensive.
Very expensive.
When you tell people you're buying 130 acres of land for $3.1 million, it sounds like a hell of a deal until you realize that you also are inheriting 50 some odd decrepit buildings with lead paint and asbestos.
Well, as you know, talking about some of those buildings, a lot of the roofs now are leaking.
Yes.
There's water in the basement, there's asbestos and so forth.
I think a lot of them are just not salvageable. I think they're probably too far gone. They haven't had heat in those buildings for almost 10 years now. And some of the buildings have been vacant for 40 years.
Yeah.
So.
Now,
it's another thing we're going to deal with in the next few years. So keeps life interesting.
right across from the townhouse is that building. Questions are asked. The one I got referenced, parking facility, and they want to put an elevator in it and so forth. No.
Oh, is this the former where the Allen block or the Ord block,
Right.
depending on how long you've been in town? And then some just think of it as the former home of Master's Touch.
Right.
I happened to go to a Board of Appeals meeting last night, and that was the topic of discussion. The owners of the property there with their attorneys, and they are proposing a mixed use of commercial on the first floor, office space on the second floor, and residential on the third floor. And of course, some people didn't know the building had a third floor, thought it was just empty storage. Well, it's primarily been used for for storage space. One of the big problems is the parking. Where do you put the parking? It seems like everything in the downtown, when they say, well, where are you going to put the parking? They say, well, they can use the parking behind Town Hall or behind Master's Touch building. And at some point, it's going to be a problem. But for now, I think, as someone said, you can always find a parking space in Medfield. It might not be right next to the door. You might have to walk a couple of 100 feet to get there, but you can always find a parking space. So I think we still have a way to go. That's an important building as far as the character of the town goes, and it will be nice to see it restored and put to good use. So sometimes you have to take the reality of the situation that they don't have any parking with that building.
The person that asked about that building was Lorraines. She had a flower shop there,
That's right, I remember it well. Nice. I was sorry to see that go. It was a nice little,
I know a lot of people were.
Yes.
And, we went there for some flowers for my wife's grave, and we were talking about it, and she wondered, what are they going to do with the building? Because the Allens had it for years.
Yes. Maybe she'll want to move back.
I don't know. I really don't.
Well, as I said, first floor, what the owner's proposing, first floor commercial, second floor office, third floor, 2 or 3 apartments on the third floor.
Will's Hardware was in that building for quite a while, too.
Yes, yeah. But the difference today is, have so many more regulations to comply with. You have the American with Disabilities Act requirements. You've got the lead paint laws. You've got stormwater retained on site, the federal stormwater regulations, and it makes everything much more difficult, much more expensive.
Very true.
So it takes a lot of money to do these things. That's what, when people said, "How could a town garage cost $10–11 million?"
Yeah, I was going to ask you about town garage.
And I say, well, for one, you've got so many rules and regulations that you have to comply with between ADA and building codes and, just regulation after regulation, stormwater regulations, that it drives up the price. And then you've got the public bidding laws, you've got the prevailing wage laws, you've got the file sub bid laws, and all those things keep adding layer and layer onto the price, and we keep passing more and more laws to that effect, and people say, well, what happened? I said, well, I guess we were asleep at the job. We didn't bother to worry when these regulations are being passed, or these laws are being passed, and it's finally catching up on us. The bill's coming due. Which I'm afraid is what's going to happen at the federal government one of these days. The bills are finally going to come due, and all the guys that are down there are going to be running for cover.
True. Right across from that building we were discussing a few minutes ago is Roaches. How's that coming along?
They're really going to town. My understanding is they would like to be in operation by the end of July. Now, whether they can make that or not, that's a pretty ambitious target, but they've really been going at it. Now, there has been a little bit of discussion, I guess we should say, about the color, choice of color for the building.
I'm glad you brought it up. I didn't.
Yes, well, we've got a number of calls at town hall saying, how could you let them do that? How could the town let them paint it that color? Well, it was funny, the third grade classes come through this time of year, and they do tour the town hall and the Peak House and the Unitarian Church and the Dwight Turvey House, and it's kind of a annual rite of spring, I guess you'd call it. So I said to the kids, there were 5 or 6 different groups came through, and I said to them, what do you think about the color of the building across the street? And a lot of them loved it. They thought it was wonderful. They like nice, bright things, and it certainly is bright. I said, well, they better not tell your mothers that, because everybody, your mothers are appalled by it. So it's a very mixed reaction. A lot of
Plus the fact that occasionally, Mike, when I hear that people have a big problem now behind Roaches because of parking to the library.
Well, certainly there is right now because it's closed. So, and once again, it's a question of not that they can't find a parking space, it's that it might be a little bit further away. But I think once the Roach Brothers project gets finished, that parking lot will be opened up, and they've worked out some sort of an agreement with the Roach Brothers and the library trustees over the use of that for library patrons. It's not going to be as formal as it was with the agreement with the Kellys, but it will still permit some parking in the back lot as long as people don't abuse it. If people start abusing and parking up front, then I think they have the right to cancel it.
Back lot area, that facility back there
yes,
for the library.
And is there ever enough parking? Probably not, but you can't have a viable downtown if you put in the parking that's required, because you'd have to tear down all the buildings to get the parking in.
True.
And you wouldn't have a downtown. So.
You had mentioned earlier about the director of the library leaving?
Yes. A couple of weeks ago, Deborah Kelsey announced that she's leaving to assume the post of library director for the city of Gloucester. She's relocating to that area, and of course it would be a brutal commute from Gloucester to Medfield, or actually Newburyport, I think is where she bought her house. So she's was selected for a job as library director in Gloucester, and she'll be leaving shortly to assume that position. So the library trustees will have their work cut out for them. I think she was able to accomplish a lot in terms of changing the library from one that's primarily book-centric to one that reflects the not only books but the multimedia world we live in, whether it's computers, tablets, iPhones, iBoxes, just everything, social media. You go in the library and it used to be very quiet. Now they have concerts and lectures and everything else going on. So it's a much different library than the type of library we grew up in, where mum was the word, you didn't dare speak.
Right.
And you were supposed to go in there and read and do your homework, and that was it. Today it's almost a social gathering spot. So the library's had to reflect that, and I think she's done a good job bringing a lot of those changes about.
Yeah, I had the opportunity some years ago to interview her and talking about the advancement in the library. Two other questions, Mike. The new garages for the fire department and also police.
Yes, well, as you know, the town meeting this year appropriated the final $850,000 to complete the bid documents for the public safety building. It'll be located on the site of the existing fire and police station. And while, if the town meeting approves construction funding for it, which they'll probably be asked to do, the building committee is looking to have a special town meeting probably in January or February. And then hopefully we'll, or actually what they want to do is put it out to bid and then have in November, December, and then have a special town meeting when the bids are open and they know the exact price, or close to the exact price, and then ask the selectmen to call a special town meeting in January or February, and a special override election as quickly as can be done after that. And they would like to get under construction in the spring or summer of 2015, and probably take about 18 months to 2 years to complete. It's a complicated project because you do have to tear down the existing police and fire station, or what do you do with the police and fire station when you're building the new building. And right now we're talking about temporarily locating the fire department in a couple of bays at the Newtown garage, and also having space within the office wing of the Newtown garage for the firemen to occupy. For the police is a little more complicated because there's so much more communications equipment, radios, security equipment, telephone systems and all that, that we're looking at trying to rent some space that has, coaxial cable, that has fiber optic lines and telephone panels and all that stuff. And I think we've got a handle on it.
Really.
Yes, yeah.
Sure.
So it'll be tough. Fortunately, the experience with the town garage helped a bit. It's given us some ability to know what we have to do and how tight the time frames are. So, but it's an exciting project. I think the building is going to be quite an attractive addition to the town, and I think people will be very, very happy with it. And it's a good timing. We're starting to finish up paying for a lot of earlier projects that we borrowed money for. For example, in 2 years, the library and the town hall will be paid for. The closing, capping of the landfill will be paid for. Some of the land purchases we made will be paid for. I think there's a sewer project that will be paid for. The purchase of land for the post office will be paid off. So we have the ability to absorb some new debt.
That's excellent. It is.
But it's still, it ain't free and it ain't cheap. So, but I think people realize that the police and fire departments have been operating under less than ideal conditions up there.
Well, that fire department working on a shoestring, isn't any room in it. I was there.
Yeah, exactly.
And the police, so they're anxious. I have, and been saving this one question for you.
Uh-oh. Well, I know you've already asked the hospital question, so it can't be that.
Taxes.
Taxes? Well, tax bills went out this week for the bill that's due August 1st. They try to get them out as early as possible because people that go away for the summer, that might have a summer cottage down the Cape or travel plans, they'd like to get the bills so that they don't have to worry about them when they're on vacation. They can pay them before they go. And so they went out this week for the first payment that's due August 1st. I think the tax rate, although it doesn't show up in the bill because these are not actual bills, the two first quarterly bills are estimated bills, and then the February and May of 2015 will be the actual bills. But I think the actual tax rate that was based on is about 1678, something like that. It's up about, I think 3.5% from last year. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean your bill will go up 3.5% because that includes new growth from new subdivision filings or new additions or new homes. So it'll be slightly less than that, the impact on the average homeowner. The problem that makes it difficult for people to understand is we're required by the state to revalue all property in town every year. It used to be every 10 years, and then it used to be every 5 years, and then it went to 3 years. Mm-hmm. And now effectively they make you do it every year. So it depends on how you make out in that reval. If your property is going up less than the town as a whole, you might have some savings there. If your property is going up faster than the town as a whole, it might cost you a little extra on your tax bill. So it's kind of a tricky situation, and people say, well, why can't you tell me whether my tax bill is going up or not next year? Because I don't know whether your house is appreciating faster in value than other houses in town or whether it's dropping in value. And those are all factors that come into play as to what your actual tax bill is. But as I've said before, 2 years ago the tax rate stayed the same, didn't go up at all. This year that we're just finishing, it went up about 2.5%. This year is about 3.7%. So it's a little higher, but we're absorbing a lot of these capital projects, and we're absorbing some big increases. For example, our health insurance rates went up 8.8% this year, so that added to it. And we had the $850,000 for the design plans for the public safety building that was impacted, and we also have the first full year of the debt service on the town garage. So we think overall the trend is much better than it had been 10 years ago when the taxes were going up 7-8% a year. It's certainly come way down from that.
You bet.
As a taxpayer, I hate to see it go up at all, but if you want these things, they have to be paid for, whether it's
better believe it.
Land or good schools or
has to be paid for.
good roads and good public safety services. It's expensive.
You bet it is.
They say the only thing more expensive is not to do these things. Then it catches up with you over time.
It does. Well, Mike, that old clock on the wall, as usual. Is there anything you'd like to add or talk about before we close?
Sure. Well, of course, this time of year, we're always seeing the young men and women leave Medfield, go off to the world of college or careers or military, whatever. And we had graduation a couple of weeks ago, and I'd like to wish all the new graduates, both at Medfield High School, Tri-County Vocational, many of the private schools that Medfield kids attend. Wish them the best as they go out into the real world, and we're hoping that someday their achievements will reflect well on the town of Medfield. So go out and take on the world and do well.
Well, once again, Mike, as we do, sitting at the anchor desk, very informative, always has been. Always look forward to our monthly get-together.
I do too. It's always a break to get out of town hall, even if it's only for an hour.
And so, once again, I want to thank you, and we'll be looking forward to what's going on in July. Thanks, Mike.
Take care, as usual. Thank you.
Plus, you have a good 4th.
I certainly hope to. It's if the weather stays like this, it will. I guess it's going to be a gorgeous weekend from the weather
They say
forecast.
it's going to be a real nice one.
So we need a little rain. I guess we're in a water ban situation now. It has been dry the past couple of weeks, so the Water and Sewer Board has imposed a water ban. But hopefully we'll get a little rain before the
We need
4th.
it.
Yes, the grass is starting to look a little bit brown. So.
Well, Mike, thanks once again, and we'll look forward to sitting here in July.
See you next month.
Right.
God be willing the creek don't rise, as they say.
This is Jack Peterson wishing you and yours the very best. Good night.
Hi, I'm Larry Kramer.
And I'm Andy Spencer.
We're from Rue 109, and you're watching
Medfield.tv.